the development of the participants during the 2 years of the program has been absolutely phenomenal. When they started, many of them were somewhat immature in their leadership behaviors, but they very soon took on board from the first module components of leadership behavior, and as they started to apply them, what we saw was an incredible maturing of the capabilities of the participants in terms of providing leadership to the profession.
I have been very lucky in working with Rotman and working with Joe DeCruz on this program. I started out thinking, they would help me deliver content for the participants. What I had not anticipated was the learning that I would have in working with Joe and Rotman. Ike had already taught me a lot of these things. What I learned from Joe and Rotman in trying to put together the content took it way beyond. So for me, it's been an immensely positive experience, both in terms of the content that I've learned from them, but also in terms of my teaching style.
I think for me, what's been very helpful to learn from this program has been that I may have been limiting myself in terms of my end goal. So it may have been too narrow, and this course has really opened up my thoughts on the potential that's available. So instead of necessarily just either my local government and local medical group, now I'm thinking more nationally, expanding that nationally.
I'd like to say, what I feel is that it really hasn't changed very much. I'm still on point with my game plan. I think it was a pretty ambitious game plan, and it had multiple facets to it. One, to personally become better in my local community in terms of how I'm integrating what I do with local levels of government, hospital, so administration, if you will. And then how I planned to change what I was doing in order to evolve a system, a Canadian type of system, and be a model for how that might be possible to survive and thrive, really, in a changing healthcare system in Canada.
I was trying to think about why this program was so important to me over the course of the last 2 years, and upon reflecting about it, I realized that it's very unique because as physicians, sometimes we have a hard time relating to everyone else, especially as surgeons, and of course as ophthalmologists, we are very idiosyncratic in our personality. And I think that's one of the reasons why we kind of flock to conferences, because we like to be with people who are like us, And this group of people that AMO and Rotman brought together under Devesh and Jen's vision is so special, because we literally handpicked a dozen or so people who are exactly like me, and that's priceless, because I don't think that will ever happen again. And so you've taken people with similar aspirations, similar fears, similar hopes, and similar plans for the future, and not only brought us together so that we can feed off of each other, but then the program brought in experts that kind of plucked all of those important things that were foremost in our lives and taught us more and kind of formed us. And so I think what I gained the most from the program are things that are probably not really describable in words, because the modules all kind of become part of you, and it becomes part of your toolkit.
Going to the labs in Groningen, because that was really exciting. That was seeing where the magic happens. I mean, for me, I'm always interested as a tinkerer in the way things work. So kind of seeing where they prototype things and do the lab bench testing and optical bench testing, for me, that was a real treat.
The one that I would say really stood out in terms of helping me develop, I think, was the communication and presentation preparation module. The speaker really kind of broke it down in a way that was very simple and organized, and gave us a framework for how to put our presentations together to really reach an audience. And I've implemented her strategies in a few talks that were novel that I've made since then, and I think the feedback from the audience members were that it was definitely much more effective.
From the very first ELP session, I realized that these goals I had set were too tangible, too easy, too everyday. And the reason I'm saying that is not because I achieved those goals. I'm still in the process, so I have not achieved those goals. But what I realized that I should have set my goals not at this level, but at this level. And as I found that the sessions, what they gave me was a certain level of insight, some imagination, even a certain level of transcendence where I should be looking at things at a different level.
Essentially what this program has done is brought the future leaders in Canadian ophthalmology together under one roof through 4 very intense weekends. We bonded not just through learning, but also through team building events and social events. And as we go home from the weekend and from this program, I think now the bonds will remain. We are all in different subspecialties. We all have different areas of strength. So I think moving forward, we'll be working, collaborating together, and hopefully bring a brighter future to Canadian ophthalmology.
First thing I realized when I arrived there, so many bright and innovative people, so involved, that was very humbling. And it was a great experience. I changed many things in my practice and in my plan. For example, many practical things.
Having come into the program about 4 or 5 years into my career, at a point where it's very easy to start to plateau and to start to become comfortable with what we're doing and stop challenging ourselves to provide better care and continuing improving on that care. The program really served as a kick in the pants and as a reminder about how important that is.
And I think if there was one thing that I took from the Emerging Leaders program, it was from each of the modules, really understanding, do I want to put my efforts into more research side? Do I want it in, which area do I want to go in? And I think that the modules helped me reflect on this and where my priorities wanted to be. We only have so much time and energy. And I was able to crystallize that for myself and see what was important to me and which direction I wanted to go. So I ended up focusing on an idea that I had about trying to write a book that tries to share pearls and anecdotes that I've learned over the years from all of my great mentors and trying to pass that on to junior staff and residents going forward.
I do think that all of the modules do build on each other. They are very distinct and have very different focuses, but they do build on each other in the sense that they do allow you to be granted the greatest foundation. So for example, early on with the management structure, that was very helpful for me as starting out in practice and learning how to navigate that and how to figure out how I'm going to get that started. I think that they build on each other as well, though, in the sense not just the content but the relationships, because as you go through, you are building these very strong professional relationships, and so you're able to kind of help each other more and more throughout the course of the modules.
It's just that what happens not during the didactic sessions, but off the sessions, that was what I found most valuable. So somebody's looking at the same picture you are, but sees it completely different. You're like, wow, I missed that perspective. And then it just can show you how limited you are in a thought pattern at that point in time. And so I think our goal is to become comprehensive, not just as people, and more emotionally intelligent. And I think through this program, I've realized that by attending and engaging, that's the goal.
Looking back at all 4 modules, they've been amazing. And I think that this time has given us all an opportunity for self-reflection, but that this time has also been given us time to work with our peers and really push ourselves forward. And I think there's a quote out there that says, we are who we surround ourselves with. And if we're surrounding ourselves with positive influences that are going to constantly say, if you think your bar is there, really your bar is way up higher, we're going to constantly always strive for more. So I think that for me, quite honestly, my favorite module was going to Groningen, and that because not only were our eyes open to how how amazing it is how these lenses are individually fabricated and how amazing that was, but also gave us an opportunity to really spend time with our peers.
When I reflect on my personal development plan and my impression of how things were at the application stage versus now, there's a lot of common things. I still have the same aspirations. The only thing I will say that has changed is that failure is something now that through this process I've learned to embrace that, and through the failures that I've had over this program and over this time period, over the past 2 years, you know, I don't look at them as true failures, but rather opportunity and areas to expand and fulfill the breadth of what I'm trying to accomplish, and equipped with the tools that I've learned through this program. I feel that I'm much more able to respond to areas such as that, areas of perceived failure, and capitalize on that.
Coming from a very academic background where everything was focused on academia, the program really opened my eyes, both with respect to the teachings that we got, but also with who I was talking to, that people are more in the private centered, like in private centers or private practice, and we're getting a bit more of the business side. It helped, I think, both flesh out my leadership plan, but also make it more realistic and ground it maybe a bit more in reality and less just the academic focus.
I had a very good foundation of where we are in ophthalmology, especially with all the drastic changes that have occurred over the last 5 years. But where are we going? And I think this program has really allowed me to get to that answer, actually. And it's been really fascinating talking to both my peers as well as the moderators of what the potential of ophthalmology is going to be. How have I grown from this is really incredible. My practice in general has expanded by more than 30%, and my the evaluations by my patients have also improved drastically. So it's been a really great 2 years, and I think the program's been a big part of that.
Leadership development has been front of mind for me for many, many years, but this program allowed me to focus on it even more. I went through some important professional challenges and considerations during these 2 years, and I personally found that the mentorship program allowed me to share my experiences and my opportunities and my concerns with my mentor, who I found to be wise and caring and confidential. And that ability to share my situation with my mentor was a really impactful part of this program.
Come with an open mind, you know, study hard, do your homework, because you're only going to get out whatever you put into it, but it's hands down one of the best experiences I had in my life.
Having a mentor, you know, a lot of the things are straightforward, like, you know, get a mentor. There's nothing magical about that, but it's something very easy to do, and I did, and that's been a real eye-opener, because I guess I realized that I was placing barriers, mental barriers or whatever, and speaking to this mentor and talking about these barriers, he was able to say, well, I also had those barriers, but this is how I got around it.
Every module and every aspect of what's been discussed in this program is relevant to your life, and it's just a matter of how you want to use it. I think the biggest challenge is to use it and not to just have your weekend session and then not use it in the 6-month interval or the 8-month interval, whatever it might be.
As the meetings went on, as time went on, I started to come out of my shell and to get to know people that were strangers to me at the beginning, and I've learned the most from them, from asking them to give me feedback and from learning about their career course, their personal course, their path, and how they've gotten there.
The 360 leadership feedback was fantastic. It was very introspective, not just for myself though, but seeing how other people look at their feedback and seeing their thought process, because it's great to see what you have, but also seeing how other people learn from their feedback helped me even reflect on mine even more.
Felt like Neo in the Matrix before he found out about the Matrix, or Luke Skywalker before he found out about the Force. You think you know what you want, but then when I got exposed to, and some of the skills that we got and some of the insight we got from various players gave you the big picture, and you saw all the moving parts. And all the moving parts were my personal, my family life, my work life, my ambitions and what my limitations were as well. So I kind of got a sense of that. So I think that the program, and this is with the Rotman School of Business, AMO, the great colleagues that I got to work with, that program, it helped me to, as in the movie Matrix, the Morpheus would say, it showed me the door, but we had to go through it.
I think for me, each of the modules offered something very different, and they all complemented each other. And it really helped us reflect on, outside of the clinical care that we're all, giving, and we're all working hard towards providing great care for our patients. What are the other value-added things that we can look at in our professional lives to enrich ourselves, enrich all those around us? So when I look back on all of the modules, each of them I found complemented, all of them to make something even greater than each one on its own.
The module that was in Groningen in the Netherlands, that was extremely valuable from a scientific point of view. When we implant these intraocular lenses and symphony lenses in people's eyes, to have that knowledge of how the lens is actually manufactured and the detail and the intricacy that goes into each lens is extremely essential and valuable for a surgeon when we communicate with our patients.
It's actually all of them. And that's the most important point, I think, of doing a program like this, is you have to go through each module, and each module builds on one another. In fact, when I look at that, if I hadn't done number 1 or number 2, I think number 3 module would be very difficult. But actually, because you're growing and creating different layers, and those layers are building up like a pyramid, you actually benefit from the most from this program. So I would say all of the programs are equally as good, and you have to really participate in all those programs.
If I had to pick a module that would be more beneficial, it will be very difficult for me, because the modules were very well planned and very interesting. It's hard to find a module in which I did not learn anything that was not possible to use in the practical world, in my real practice, in my real clinic.
The advice I would have for a new participant, and I really found this to be natural, but I really appreciate that I let myself open up to those in the group. I think the more you open up and the more you share both your challenges and your opportunities with this brilliant group, I think the more you'll get out of it. And also, the more you share with them, the more you will connect with people in the program, and those connections allow you to grow and also allow you to have more fulfillment from this program.
The 360 leadership feedback was fantastic. It was very introspective, not just for myself though, but seeing how other people look at their feedback and seeing their thought process, because it's great to see what you have, but also seeing how other people learn from their feedback helped me even reflect on mine even more.
I have had a few people ask me why we did this, and the real reason behind this, it was because I had gone through a period of time. I was lucky enough to have a coach, and I was struggling with a question that a lot of our participants have struggled with. Why am I doing this? Why am I, pursuing some of these leadership goals in my career? And what's the end point, right? Is it success for the sake of success? Is it change for the sake of change? And what I learned from that coach was really powerful. And she taught me that at the end of it all, at the end of my life, at the end of my career, it wasn't going to be about what I had done, the impact that I'd had, or even the journey I took to get there. It was actually going to be more about the people on that journey. And for me, that was very powerful. And the first thing that I wanted to do was make sure I had the right people on that journey, the right people on the train, and I was sure others would feel the same way. This program was created so that the 18 of us could find each other, and then we could go on that journey together. Because I think at the end of it all, that was where the meaning was going to be. And at the end of the 2 years, I feel like I've gotten that family and more from these participants. That's what's been most exciting for me.
My advice to the current participants is that all of them should act as role models for their profession as they move forward in the future. People will be looking to them to display the kind of leadership behaviors that the profession needs. And as we move forward into an environment that is more volatile, more complex, more ambiguous, and therefore more difficult to operate in, their leadership will be so important for the profession.